Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we'd do a thrift store haul since I haven't done one in a long time, and um, the reason why is because I haven't really collected much over the last little while because there wasn't very much to collect. Um, I think I'm reaching the peak of my film library because it's more and more difficult to find films. I still find them, but I don't find them at the frequency that I used to, and I'm starting to pay more for them because the really good deals are few and far between, and usually include a whole bunch of films that I already have, right? So I have to be, I'm becoming more particular in the films that I buy. So when you're more particular, you're not buying as much in bulk. You're buying more smaller amounts. You're going to pay more for them, right? Uh, so I'm not spending a lot of money in that way as much as I used to. I'm not getting as much stuff. But I did go to a thrift store yesterday, and I found a good load of CDs. Somebody dropped off their library, had very good taste in music, so I thought I'd go through those that I picked up, and I did pick up some books and some DVDs as well. And Blu-rays. Uh, there's a bit of stuff here, so let's get through it, and we'll see what you think of it by the end of the video. All right, so. Let's do this. Let's do some books first. All right. So here's The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. This is a Norton critical edition. I don't know if you know these, the Nortons, that symbol there. They're um, if you do enjoy reading just for reading, then you pick up any novel as you wish. If you enjoy, reading books and then what their significance was, where they situated in the history of literature, what their importance was, that kind of thing, then the Norton critical editions are really good for that, right? They uh, they have the novel or the book, but they also have other essays and everything about the book within it. So it's kind of like a student edition of a book, right? If you're learning English literature, this would be a book that you would learn about. This is probably Wharton's best book. It's one of her later books, um, but it has that universal appeal of that lost love, where basically there's a man in this film. I won't go into the names or whatever. I'd have to look them up again. But basically, the storyline is, uh, you know, this has to do with the aristocracy back in the 1800s or whatever, right? So he's been there's aristocratic man who's been betrothed to a woman, a sheltered woman, you know the atypical woman that you would want back in those days. She's been sheltered by her parents. She's quite innocent. She's pure, and all those other words that they used back then, right? And so he's quite excited to marry her. But there's her cousin ends up coming back from Europe. Now this is in England or whatever. Um, come and she's a bit flamboyant. Let's say she's out there. She's a globetrotter. She was married to another aristocrat from Europe that she kind of ran home to escape from because she doesn't love the guy or whatever. And so she's all that flamboyant. She's all that that she doesn't really play by the rules kind of thing. And the gentleman who's marrying the conservative girl kind of becomes attracted to her cousin or this flamboyant woman instead of the one that he's going to marry. But he ends up marrying. He ends up falling in love with the flamboyant one, but ends up marrying the conservative girl, and they never really get together because the wife ends up becoming pregnant, and then her cousin kind of escapes back to Europe again to get away from him, so not to be in his presence or whatever, because of temptation and everything, right? So, anyways, it's that. I don't know if you've ever been in that kind of love triangle as a man or whatever. I can't tell you how it feels in a woman's case because I'm not a woman, but in a man's case, that terror, that responsibility, and all that, or you know, love, sometimes they coalesce. And that's what you really want, is them coalescing together, where the person that you fall in love with, who's the love of your life, is the one that you marry and have a family and children with and everything. But sometimes you end up marrying somebody thinking that they're that way, but then later on you meet somebody else that just blows your mind away, kind of idea, and then you're kind of stuck in that situation, right? So, um, but there is a bit of, is it the grass is greener on the other side to that kind of situation? But um, overall, uh, I think everybody's felt that in some way in their life as they've gotten older in age or whatever. So the age of innocence is kind of a universal, you know, um, human uh, situation, right? So that's that. Next up, I found this nice edition of the Holy Bible. All right. This one is the Catholic edition of the NRSV, which is New Revised Standard Version. Now, it's always good to have a Bible because even if you're an atheist or agnostic and you don't really believe in God, or especially don't believe in Christianity or Catholicism even more directly, um, the Bible has influenced everything everywhere in the Western world. All right. So movies are influenced it, morality, law, everything is has been influenced by the Holy Bible at some point in Western culture, right? So you can't really avoid it. You should read it just for information's sake, right? So that way, when things are referenced, you understand where those references come from. When you realize that this is the reason or how this came about is because of this or whatever, then you just can't avoid the Bible. You're going to end up knowing about it no matter what you do, whether you're religious or not. So it's always good to read something, even if you're not, um, ad, an adherer to that religion or whatever, right? So, all right, so that's the Bible. Next up is Gabriel Garcia Marquez's novelette, Chronicle of a Death Foretold. All right, it's basically about a murder, and it's pretty short. He's one of Colombia's greatest writers, one of Latin America's greatest writers, one of South America's greatest, Central America's greatest writers, North America's greatest writers, just one of the great writers in the Latin world, right? So um, it's a Spanish novel translated into English. All right, so it is a really really good book. All right, and all of his stuff really is. All right, so we got Dr. Faustus, played by Marlowe, contemporary of Shakespeare. This is about basically Faust, the guy in literature that was having a boring life, so he decided to sell his soul to the devil to have an exciting, rich, and fabulous life. That's kind of about what this is about. All right, so that's Faustus. Another Croft classic is Samson Agonistus by John Milton, and he has some other poetry in this. This play, Samson play, it's about Samson. Here, uh, you can read about Samson in that, right? So, all right, uh, so Samson, he's the guy with the Delilah. Well, this is when he was. This takes place in his life where Milton goes through his life. He doesn't tell his early story. This is after when he was captured by the Philistines and his hair was cut and his eyes were uh, gouged out. He has no eyes. He has no hair. He's a weak person, and Milton goes on from there about the agony of Samson in that play or poem. It's kind of a play poem, a drama, but a poem, but a play, right? So, all right. Next up is Ernest Hemingway's *The Sun Also Rises*. This is one of his greatest novels. It was his first, I think, if I remember correctly, and it talks about these friends that travel from Paris to Spain to Pamplona to go see the running of the bulls, and it's one of Hemingway's most famous novels. All right. So next up is James Joyce, A Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. This is basically a fiction story, but it's basically a coming of age kind of story, or an opening of the eyes as you grow older for an artist. And uh, Joyce doesn't use his own. name in this, but it's kind of autobiographical. What name does he use? Stephen? Stephen Daedalus. Daedalus as in, the Greek god of what, like the harvest and all that kind of stuff. I can't remember. So it's his first novel as well. So this was his first novel, and now this is his first novel. And he would expand what he was writing in a portrait of an artist as a young man to Ulysses, that really big volume, right? So next up is the French novel Suite Française. All right, this is in French, but basically this is written by Irene Nemirovsky. She was like, uh, what was she? Ukrainian? I think she was Ukrainian. Well, she was a Jewish person, born in Ukraine, but she spent most of her life in France, in Paris, if I remember correctly. But what happened to her was the Germans invaded France, took over France, and then she was captured for being a Jew, sent to Auschwitz, and basically murdered. Right? She was one of the 6 million. Um, but she was writing a novel cycle during that period of time, which was going to be like 5 or 6 novels, but she only managed to write two of them, which was the first one was about when the Germans come in and occupy France, and this is taking place in Paris and the life in that area. And then the second novel is about a small town where, in the first novel, the person, I don't know if it's the same character or not, but she transplants the next novel from, the city of Paris to a small town and what life was like during that time living in a small town. So it's kind of more rosy or whatever, right? But then she was supposed to write 3 or 4 more books in this cycle, but captured by the Germans and killed because she was Jewish. All right. So um, if you haven't read Suite Française, I think it's been translated into English. The two novels have been translated into English. You can read them if that's something that would interest you. All right. So what's up next? All right. Let's do some CDs. All right. So I went to uh, a thrift store that thrift store is pretty good for books. All right. Not so much for films, DVDs, Blu-rays, or anything like that. Occasionally, you'll get a CD or a Blu-ray, a Blu-ray or a DVD there, but most of it's crap. But what they do have, for some reason, is every few months somebody comes in and drops off a collection of music on CD that's just really good. And this guy has really good taste. So he basically had. Now I'm not sure if I got all of them because some of these CDs are some of the greatest albums of all time, and other are kind of the lesser known versions from the same kind of people. So you have, for example, Bob Dylan's "Bringing It All Back Home." That's up there with "Blonde on Blonde" and others by Dylan. I think this is his second album. Um, Came out in like '68, somewhere along there. I didn't write it down. But anyways, if you like Bob Dylan, the '60s stuff is his best stuff, right? So, and that's one of the core Bob Dylan that you should listen to if you're going to listen to Bob Dylan, Bringing It All Back Home. But then you have these two albums. So you have Infidels, which came out in the '80s. All right, he went through like a Christian phase, I guess you could call it a Catholic phase, a Christian phase. I'm not sure, but basically he found God or something like during the late '70s, '80s, and a lot of his albums during that time were religious in origin, and the mainstream kind of fell off Bob Dylan at that time. But then he came out with this album, and this was more mainstream, more less religious, more interpersonal or whatever, and people just jumped on this because they were missing this type of Bob Dylan. But this isn't one of his greatest albums. All those great albums like Blonde on Blonde and those albums, Highway 61 revisited and all that, back in the '60s and early '70s, right? And this is Self Portrait. This is one of his later, I think it's his 18th. Is it 18th? That's my guess. This is all done from memory, right? So um, I'm not sure when this came. Anyways, this was kind of panned when it first came out, but it's kind of gained an audience since. So uh, it's hard to keep Bob Dylan music down, even his mediocre stuff. All right. So he also had two albums by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Now, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, I would argue that they're the greatest Australian band of all time. What do you have coming out of Australia that's the greatest bands? With AC/DC, but they're British. That they're kind of like expat Brits that got um, famous in Australia. But they're an Australian band because of that. Who else? Crowded House. What? Midnight Oil. Split Ends. I think are they Australian? They're pretty good. Split Ends. Um, the Church. The Church I would put up high almost as these guys. The Church. They were a really good Australian band. Who else? Men at Work. They were big in the '80s. Midnight Oil in the '90s. But I think these guys came out in the '80s. But um, Nick Cave is an extremely good musician. All right, and Howe was it Howe his collaborator in the Bad Seeds? I think it was Howe, right? Um, Names always escape me, right? But anyways, he had a collaborator who was his main partner in the Bad Seeds. Uh, Wrote a lot of the music and everything. And when you got the Bad Seeds and Nick Cave together, they came up with a lot of really good music. If you have not um, listened to them, I would put up, I don't know, either one of these albums. This one's more of a piano album, though. This one is more of the typical Nick Cave with the guitar and everything and his scruffy voice or whatever. But this is more of a piano-based type of, and this is quite interesting if you have not heard this. Listen to his older stuff, and then um, his more rock, post-punk type of music, and then pick up this one and listen to it. This one is extremely good because of its difference, right? So look for this one as well. All right. So I would put out of all of these, this one is one of the greatest albums of all time. All right. So this guy has really good taste. Uh, Either one of these. Uh, Let Love In is my favorite Nick Cave album. So if I was to put a Nick Cave album on like a top list of the greatest albums of all time, I'd probably put Let Love In, but other people would put other ones, right? So, and he also, okay, so now we're continuing on with this gentleman. He also had 4 albums from Tom Waits. And if you had never listened to Tom Waits, man, what are you missing? I mean, this guy, his early stuff, you could tell then he did a change with his voice and he started, singing scruffily, and that really popularized him because he doesn't have that atypical, beautiful voice that singers are supposed to have. He's got that awful, smoke-ridden, uh, you know, gruff type of voice, right? And it works really well with his music. It's kind of a jazz music that you would hear in, like a smoky bar or whatever, right? And Tom Waits just capitalized on that idea and just went with it, and all of his music is extremely good. So here we have what is this one? Blue Valentine, all right, and Heart Attack and Vine. All right. The Nighthawks at the Diner. I would put this up in one of the greatest albums of all time, Nighthawks at the Diner. But probably his best is what? Sword Swordfish Trombones. Swordfish Trombones is probably his best. Rain Dogs, maybe Rain Dogs. No, I think Swordfish Trombones would be his best. And here is the Heart of Saturday Night. But all of Waite's stuff, you like that gruffy, like when you put the CD into your CD player or your computer, and then you start listening to music, you have the smell of, smoke and alcohol coming into your nose. You get that kind of feeling from him, right? So it's extremely good music. All right, so that's some of the CDs. Let's do some movies now. We have the Pelican Brief. All right. I don't collect this director. Who directed this? Alan J. Pakula. Alan J. Pakula. But I really like this one. This is my all-time favorite um, Julia Roberts movie. A lot of her movies are more female-centric. Steel Magnolias, Pretty Woman. All those. She was like, the media darling of the 1990s, right? 90s, right? So, um, but this one is more of a political intrigue type of, and when you add Denzel Washington into it, it was an amazing. This is a really good it's underrated, this film. I really enjoy this film. So if you haven't seen it, watch it, see what you think. See what you think of Julia Roberts. Basically, the storyline uh, is it her? I think it was she that wrote the Pelican Brief, which is a hypothetical. It's like a term paper for school or whatever that puts forth this conspiracy theory that's like a bit far-fetched, but what happens is it's actually really true, and then the people that are involved in this conspiracy theory starts start killing people, and he's a reporter and she's a student or whatever, and then they end up, revealing all that and, risking their lives and so on and so forth. It's quite interesting film. All right. So next up is Flags of Our Fathers. I collect Clint Eastwood as a director. I have this on DVD, but I don't have it on Blu-ray yet. So I picked it up. This is basically about what Iwo Jima, the Second World War. He did both. He did the Flags of Our Fathers, and then he did another one. One is taken from the American point of view of the war of that battle, skirmish, or whatever, and the people that were involved in it. One American side, and then Eastwood did the exact same movie, but he did it from the Japanese side with Japanese characters instead, right? So um, it's quite interesting to watch them both side by side and see the differences. And Eastwood, one of the great Hollywood directors, right? Actors as well. So um, I think this has the Blu-ray and the DVD, so I can probably um, get rid of the DVD. All right, so that's Flags of Our Fathers. Next up is Doctor Strange. I have much of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I do not have any of the Doctor Strange films. So I found this. It still has a nice slipcover, and it's basically brand new. It's still in its cellophane, and I picked it up for, I think it was $4 or something, $4 for that. Pretty nice. I'll put that in a bag to protect anything with paper. Like I said, if you watch my previous videos, anything that has paper in it, slip covers, or you know, CD packs that are made of paper rather than plastic or anything, I'll always protect it with plastic to protect the slip cover from getting damaged, right? So gotta get rid of the air. Get rid of the air, then seal it, and there you go. All right. So now what's up next? Okay, Motley Crue, uh, lewd, crude, and tattooed. All right. So this is basically a concert. What was it in California? I think it was in California, wasn't it? No, Salt Lake City on July 5th, 2000, this concert, all right, during their Maximum Rock tour, all right, supporting the release of New Tattoo. So this is in 2000. But, most of the music that they played on this is, from their earlier stuff, like Kickstart My Heart. That's from Dr. Feelgood, Dr. Feelgood they have here, Home Sweet Home from, what was the name of that album that had the two masks, theater masks on it? What was that called? I can't remember. Hell on Wheels, Looks That Kill, Girls, Girls, Girls from the Girls, Girls, Girls album where they're sitting on the motorcycles. All right, so I have all their great music in this DVD. You got some behind the scenes stuff and some interviews and everything. So I picked it up. Cost me like $3, so that was cool. I listened to Motley Crue. Funny story about Motley Crue. Um, my cousin got me into Motley Crue. All right, I was never big into more hard type of music, but she kind of got me into rock music because before that I was listening mostly mainstream pop music that we would hear on the radio at the time, right? So she was a cousin. I would see her. So I was um, living in Montreal at the time, and she ended up coming to visit her mom, who lived in Montreal at the time, and so I was designated to show her around the city, right? So as her protector, or whatever. She's a small girl. She's not a big girl, right? So she was like maybe 4'11", soaking wet, maybe 100 pounds, right? So anyway, so the first time I met her, she was huge into Duran Duran. Now, how she went from Duran Duran to Motley Crue the next time I saw her a couple of years later is a mystery to me. But anyway, she was like big into, and that was Theater of Pain was the one. It's called Theater of Pain. Was the album with the two masks, theater masks on it, Theater of Pain. Um, she was listening to that album at the time, if I remember correctly. And I thought you liked Duran Duran. Oh, I used to like Duran Duran, but now I like Motley Crue, So anyway, so she got me into Motley Crue, and then when Dr. Feelgood came out, I picked up that on cassette, and that is probably their greatest, album of all time. That, Kickstart My Heart is one hell of an adrenaline rush. If you've never listened to that song, put it on YouTube. Kickstart My Heart. Amazing, amazing song. All right, and the reason why that album is probably the greatest is because of, they changed their producer. I think Bob Rock is the one that produced that album, if I remember correctly. Bob Rock did it, and Bob Rock, I think he's Canadian actually, and he follow his career. Look up the albums that Bob Rock have has produced, and he's produced some really good albums. All right, for bands, he's taken them to the next level. And Motley Crue, you look at Motley Crue before Dr. Feelgood and after Dr. Feelgood, with when Bob Rock produced that album. It's not night and day, but you can definitely see the improvement, the slicking up of it, the more energy of that album, right? So anyway, so that's Motley Crue's. All right, let's do some more CDs. Okay, we got Anthrax, State of Euphoria. Anthrax, that great British band. Uh, were they part of the Invasion? With Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and all those guys, right? So um, this is one of their better albums. All right, uh, I would have to look up exactly what songs and everything are on it. Dave Brubeck's greatest album, the Dave Brubeck Quartet, one of the greatest jazz albums of all time. What is it? Time Out? What was the name of that song that everybody knows? Take Five. It has Take Five on it. One of the greatest jazz recordings of all time. And if you haven't listened to this album and you have an interest in jazz, you need to pick this album up. This is one of the seminal works in jazz. All right. And so is this one. All right. So one of the greatest jazz albums of all time. I'd put this in my list. So would I this. Speak No Evil. Wayne Shorter, one of the greatest saxophonists of all time. Um, and this one has Herbie Hancock on piano as well. So this is called Speak No Evil. So this is an extremely good album if you have not listened to this. Now some people will put jazz off to the side. They won't listen to it because much of jazz is acoustic. There is no vocals to it, but you can buy vocal jazz. My favorite type of jazz is either saxophone led jazz, all right, um, or female vocal led jazz, uh, Nina Simone, or Canadians like Molly Johnson. If you haven't listened to Molly Johnson, pick up some Molly Johnson from Canada. She has a really great jazz voice. All right, so that's Wayne Shorter, Speak No Evil, one of his greatest albums. In fact, it might be his best album. Elvis Costello, live with the Metropole Orchestra, My Flame Burns Blue. All right, Elvis Costello, one of the great composers, rock composers, but he kind of has jazz influence to him as well. Um, the Flaming Lips, this is my all-time favorite. I would put this in the top 100 list of all the greatest albums of all time by the Yoshimi. Is it Yoshimi? Yeah, Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots. Listen to this. I was blown away when I listened to this. Soft Bulletin is really good by them as well, but I think this is probably their best album of all time. Um, it's basically about. It's kind of got a Japanese influence where this girl who's fighting robots from Mars or whatever, right? So, um, then one of the all-time greatest albums, um, The Velvet Underground and Nico. All right, their greatest album, The Velvet Underground. I mean, with Lou Reed and all those guys, right? So one of the all-time greatest albums. I'd easily put this in the top 100 list. All right, next up is one of Canada's greatest '90s bands, which is called The Watchmen. And this is their last album. I think this was their fifth album, called Slow Motion. If you like Canadian rock, you'll probably like The Watchmen. They were all over the radio back in the '90s, and this was their last album before they split. All right, what else? The Bootleg Series Volume 7, No Direction Home, the soundtrack from Bob Dylan. All right, so this is basically the soundtrack to that Scorsese film about Bob Dylan. And what are they up to now? 18 bootleg uh, releases now? Something like that, anyways. Well, this one is number 7 in that bootleg series, all right, and has a No Direction Home, all right. It's nice packaging. It's nice. And then we got the Charles Mingus anthology. Basically, this was the record companies or who produced this album. Joel Dorn and Hal Wilner, executive producer James Austin. Anyway, so they decided to get together and show that Mingus is one of the greatest composers, jazz composers of all time. They'll have no argument with me. Um, some of his albums I would put in the top up there with Miles Davis easily, right? So, um, the Saint and the Sinner Lady, what they escape me, but anyways, just look up his '60s stuff, Mingus's '60s stuff. Now he was a bit of an asshole from reputation, but that assholeness turned into some really, really great jazz. All right, and this basically takes like what? How many songs? 13 songs through his career and grabs songs from all different albums from all different studios. Just his what they thought his up his peak his acme music is is on this release. All right, so found it for like $2. So isn't that great? All right, so we got Prince's Graffiti Bridge. So this is the sequel to Purple Rain, basically, and this is a soundtrack to that sequel movie. All right. Basically, it continues on with the kid from the first film, uh, where he now owns the club that he used to play in. If you saw the first movie, he played in the club. He now owns that club. But what's his name from the time? I can't remember his name. But his main competition in Purple Rain um, on stage, he owns a bunch of clubs in the same area, and then he tries to take over Prince's club, and then there's kind of like anyways, and this angel comes down to try to make them better people or something. And anyways, that was the love interest, I guess. It bombed badly compared to Purple Rain. Purple Rain is, you know, the height of the height of Prince's greatness is Purple Rain, seconded probably by Sign of the Times, in my opinion, anyways. But Purple Rain was the, I mean, if you were around at that time, it was like one hit after the other. It was like, Michael Jackson's Thriller album. It was like he had so many hits off that album. Videos were on MTV and Much Music all the time. Now, that that shit that he goes through, like some sort of sex symbol, is just stupid to me. But like if you could get away from the visuals of Prince and just listen to his music, it just is an amazing, amazing. Just like Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson wearing a leather coat saying, I'm a tough guy and I'm a part of a gang. And he's like, what, 120 pounds soaking wet, just doesn't fly or whatever. It doesn't, you can't suspend your belief in that with his videos, right? So, same thing with Prince getting out of a bathtub. He's super sexy and wet and everything. The guy must be like this tall. You blow hard and you'll fall over. I don't know. Maybe I'm being insulting or whatever, but uh, as a guy, I don't know. I guess that stuff wasn't really for me. Maybe. I mean, if Prince is putting for a sexual or aura, and he's not a homosexual, then it's not towards me. Towards men that he's portraying this. He's putting it towards women, right? But if you just listen to his music, he was a great musician. Anyway, so this was the sequel to Purple Rain, and it didn't do that all that well. But the music, it's Prince, man. All this stuff is great, right? So even the craziness when he became a symbol, right? So all right. So next up is Massive Attack, Blue Lines. This is the first ever, what they consider first ever trip hop album. I would put this in the top 100 list. This is one of the greatest albums of all time. Um, uh, that and what was the other one with the thing that looked like a big beetle or bug or whatever on it? Mezzanine. Those two albums from Massive Attack. Pick those up and listen to them. They're the height of trip hop. And I miss that era. I miss that era of music in the early 2000s where the late 1990s, early 2000s when trip hop took off. I mean, it kind of matched with ecstasy, the pill that you would take to go on and go on. Anyways, I never really took ecstasy, but trip hop kind of came out of that ecstasy culture, at least out of Britain or whatever. At least correct me if I'm wrong, anyways. But that music was like totally um, conducive for popping an ecstasy pill and then going up on the dance floor and just feeling that music or whatever, right? I was a bit old for that, but I really enjoyed this music. This one, and Tricky is in this. Tricky is an extremely good artist as well. Pick up some of his stuff as well. But basically, that whole, Fatboy Slim, and there were others during that period of time where electronic trance type of dance music came out during that period of time. That was just a great flowering of awesome music at that time, and I kind of miss that music. So, all right, next up is another Elvis Costello album, Brutal Youth. I have not listened to this album, so I don't know how good it is. But Elvis Costello is just, what do you call him? Reincarnation of Buddy Holly? I don't know. You tell me. But anyways, that kind of rockabilly type of music, and then he would get together with Burt Bacharach and put up some really good music as well, kind of jazz rock oriented music. Kind of reminds me of Steely Dan as well, that kind of thing. All right, so those are the CDs, all the CDs that I picked up, I think. Now let's do a couple more books. All right, so I collect a modern library, as I said. Uh, the type of books that I like to collect: Modern Library, Everyman Library, the original version of that collection, that library, and then its updated version from the 1990s forward, and the leather-bound editions or the Folio Society books of books that I've read, so that I have a nice keepsake of them. Well, I found this book. I got this book for $5, and this is the picture of Dorian Gray, part of the Modern Library, number 125, and I didn't have this one. So $5. It's got the full dust jacket, although the dust jacket's faded. You can tell that this was put on somebody's shelf in direct sunlight, and you could tell that it's supposed to look this color, a kind of a yellowish color, and then you look, it's kind of more white here. All right, so um, this should be more yellow. But anyways, it's still the dust jacket for a book that's so old. It doesn't have a price clip. Remember what I said about price clips? If you've watched previous videos of mine, a price clip is usually a person. So if you look on the inside of a book, usually they'll have the price of the book here on the inside flap of the dust jacket, and people like to clip them off. So because they're giving the book as a gift, and they don't want the person that's receiving the book to know what they paid for the book, right? So they'll clip off the price on it. So it's called price clipping, right? Problem with it is it damages the dust jacket and makes the book worth less, right? Um, Same as writing a sentimental thing, happy birthday, hope you like this book on the inside cover page or whatever. Don't do that either. Don't clip the price. Everybody knows what the price of a book is. You know what I mean? Uh, Prices of books. If a person is a reader, he already knows what the pricing of books are. So you clipping off the price tag of the book is meaningless. I mean, they already know probably how much it costs. Like a soft cover book is going to be in the $15 to $20 range. 22. I mean, a hardcover is going to be in the $30 range. That kind of idea. A paperback's going to be in the $10 to $15 range, right? So you clipping off or taking a marker to mark out the price of it is just stupid. Just damages the book's worth, right? And you have to think that the books that you give or the books that you own aren't really yours. They are in your possession, but you're more of a custodian of this kind of thing because after you die, the book will continue to be in circulation. You die, your husband or your wife or your child will gain possession of that, and maybe they'll sell it, maybe they'll give it away, maybe they'll donate it to a bookstore, whatever. It's going to be in circulation until it disintegrates, right? So you're basically only a custodian of a period of time of that book. So why not keep it in as nice condition as you can for the next person that gets it, right? So don't price clip, don't write stuff on it. If you're gonna give a book as a gift, don't mark it out. Another thing that a person will do is mark it out with a black marker or whatever. You know what I mean? It just wrecks the book, right? 200 years from now, the person looks at the book and then they don't know what the price of the book was. And going, okay, what was the price of this book back 200 years ago? If they're, a historian, archaeologist, whatever, you know what I mean? All that information you're stopping future generations from knowing, right? So I know it sounds kind of, oh, you're acting stupid or whatever, right? But and if you're gonna leave a sentimental note in the book, then get a card. You know how flower shops will you put the flowers and then you have a card for the flower you put in. Just take a card. and write whatever you need to on the card, and then just put the card in and close the book. And now you have the sentimental thing, you have the book, but the book is still in good condition, right? You're not wrecking the book when it's basically brand new. You're already wrecking it, right? So don't price clip this, and don't write on the inside of it. It just wrecks it. Just wrecks the book. Uh, the worth of the book, right? It makes it less collectible, right? But anyway, so this, the story of picture of Dorian Gray, where Dorian Gray um, makes a deal with the devil, is it right? And wants to live forever and never grow old, and so uh, he puts his aging on a self-portrait of him, of a picture hanging on the wall, right? Anyway, um, so that's a picture of Dorian Gray, number 125 in the original Modern Library series of books. So these were pocket books, right? This is my hand. This is the book. It's small, right? Um, and you can carry it around easily. And they were reasonably priced. Let's put it that way. For any person could buy them. You didn't have to be rich to buy a book, right? So all right. So what else? All right. Let's. Okay. So now we have the Kundalini Tantra. Basically, this is the author's name is Swami Satyananda Saraswati, and basically this goes through all the philosophy behind and the poses that you do in yoga, the whole tantric. What is it called? All the chakras. Yeah, chakras. That was the word I was looking for. All the chakras and so on and so forth. So this is supposed to be, and it gives you the poses on the inside. So um, I'm not huge into yoga, uh, but there is an audience for yoga and some good literature for yoga. So I picked this book up, and I know I'll be able to sell it to somebody who has more interest in that, right? So, all right, what else is up? Okay, so speaking of the modern library, I collect the Everyman Library, the originals, which were the same size as the modern library, actually a bit thinner or whatever, but and then they rebooted the series back in the 1990s, around 1991, and then they continued to put out. There's over 400 volumes in that new series of Everyman Library. They look like this, right? All right. So, right. So they don't put the numbers on the spines. They put the numbers on the title page. So this is number 31, if you can see that in the collection of the Everyman Library, right? So the really nice editions. Dust jackets are nice, but even the books themselves are cloth, really nice. Although I would highly suggest you not remove your dust jackets to put this on a shelf like this, unless you put it in a plastic bag of some sort to protect it, because the gold, what is it called, gilting or whatever you call it, this is all pasted on, it seems, right? And this will peel off and fall off over time, so it makes the book look, you know, ugly, really, without the dust jacket. So they originally made these when they first came out. You had a clear dust jacket with a half dust jacket with a plastic covering, right? And it would the dust jacket would end here, and it would be one flap. So it would be a flap that comes around and stops here. And then you would have the plastic dust jacket, which was over it, so that what you would see would be that through a clear plastic, right? So it makes the library look good when it's on the shelf. The only problem is that, yeah, it looked nice when you first bought them, but what would happen over time is that plastic part of the dust jacket would yellow, and it would turn like like the color of a smoker's lung. You know what I mean? Like really yellow nicotine color to it, right? Whether you smoked in your house or not, right? And it made the books look ugly. So what people did was start throwing away those things and then put the books on the shelf just naked, all right? And then that would wreck the spine. All the gilding would peel off or crack off over time and make the books look ugly. So what they did was they stopped doing that actually quite quickly, and they started doing full dust jackets. And what they did, they would imitate, the the spine in the actual dust jacket itself. So I found two books from a bookstore. This one, Charles Dickens' David Copperfield, one of Dickens' greatest novels. Although my favorite is Great Expectations, but this is one of the great ones of him. And I also found the collected tales of Gogo. All right, and it's in really nice condition as well. See, no price clip. You have the pricing on it. Nobody clipped that price off, so that's good. No writing on the inside of it, right? No writing. If you can see that, nothing really in really good shape. And this one, when was this one published? It is in such good shape. This one was published in 1998. So this book is basically new. It still looks new because the person who had it took care of it. And it's what 26 years old already, right? So all right, so that's the collected tales from Gogo, and I still have some more, but we're getting to the end of it. All right, I think this is this the last of it. I'm not sure if I did those. I may do those. All right, so we're finished with the books. I still have some movies left, so let's do that. All right, so I ordered this off Amazon. It was under 20, so I got it. So it's called Shane, and it's directed by George Stevens, and it stars Alan Ladd. All right, so um, I'm trying to complete the whole Blu-ray collection of the Masters of Cinema, all right? And you don't really find them. You can't really find these much. If you're in Europe, they're a lot easier. If you're in Great Britain, all right. If you're in the UK, very easy. Okay, but on this side, these are harder to find. So I just keep ordering them off Amazon. You have to import them basically from the UK, right? So they don't play on your uh, Blu-ray player. But I watch most of my films on my laptop, and I have a Blu-ray player that I can just, you just use the MKV program, and that will transfer it into a digital file, and then you can play that digital file with VLC media player or whatever, right? And then you can watch the film, even though you it's what B or Zone B or Zone 2 rather than Zone 1 or Zone A, which is North America. Um, So you can still watch it. You just have to do it on your computer and do a transfer first or a conversion, right? Um, and then you can watch it, right? So I hope to get all of these Masters of Cinema because the Eureka's Masters of Cinema are really good. But what's a bit confusing when I first started getting those because I got a bunch off a guy that I did a big purchase for. I purchased like 2,000 films, all like boutique type of films from this gentleman. Uh, for like $600. It was like probably $20,000 worth of movies for $600. He was just trying to get rid of it because he wanted to sell the house that was in it, right? So that this stuff was in, right? So anyway, so um, he had a lot of the Masters of Cinema. So I started collecting it because of that. I got a bunch of them from him, and then I started collecting it afterwards. And every month or two, I'll pick up you know, a, another one of the. But I think they came out on DVDs first, and then they started doing Blu-rays because I have a lot of the DVDs as well, and the numerical order of them is different. I think they did DVDs and then they decided to go full blown into um, Blu-rays where they may have a DVD with the Blu-ray, but they went and then they started the counting all over again. I think because unlike the Criterion Collection, where the Criterion Collection you may have, let's say, um, you'll have a film that'll be let's say number 20 and it's a DVD. Well, when they put out the Blu-ray of it, they still give it number 20, right? Whereas it looks like what the Masters of Cinema have done is, um, I don't think they're duplicating DVDs into Blu-rays. I think they just kind of transitioned over to Blu-ray and started the numbering at one again, and just continued on. And I don't know if they took the ones that they put out on DVD and put them out on Blu-ray with a different number because I don't think they've done that. I think they've just left the ones that are DVDs, and then the new ones that they're putting out on Blu-ray, they have on Blu-ray. They just started the numbering over. At least that's what I'm thinking. If you know more about the Masters of Cinema, if you're over in the UK, maybe you can leave in the comments or let me know exactly how they do the numbering for them, because I know I have seen overlap where there has been a DVD and they have been a Blu-ray and the numbers aren't the same. They're different numbers, right? So I know they've overlapped or re-put out some of the ones that were on DVD onto Blu-ray, but I'm not sure why the numbering isn't the same, like let's say in the Criterion Collection. I guess what they did was once they flipped over to Blu-ray, they started over and started numbering all the Blu-rays. So what you have is actually two independent libraries. You have a library of Masters of Cinema on DVD that are numbered, and then a library of Masters of Cinema on Blu-ray that are numbered, right? Two different libraries, I guess, is the only thing I can think of. Anyway, so that's Shane. That's one of the great westerns, right? So uh, directed by George Stevens. I also found this in a bargain bin, all right, and it's the Digipack version of 35th anniversary of 16 Candles. Now, this was a big film back in the 80s. Molly Ringwald was the sweetheart of America doing these movies, and Anthony Michael Hall was in a bunch of them as well, right? So it's a nice Digipack book version of this film on Blu-ray. I have it on DVD, but I didn't have it on Blu-ray, so I picked it up. And then I found this Porky's, my all-time favorite sex comedy, my all-time favorite comedy, actually. I was living in Montreal at the time when this came out, and I went and saw this film. I was 16, and my mom was dating an usher in one of the movie theaters downtown in Montreal, and I could get in the movies for free. So I went in and I saw a double bill. I saw Porky's, but first I saw Force Five, Fox Force Five, or something along the lines. All I remember from that film is it's like a karate film, and the protagonist got stuck in a maze with a bull, with big horns or whatever, and the bull was I can't remember the rest of it, but Porky's I remember, and I've watched it like dozens of times since. Just laughed my ass off. As I get older, I know the humor is more and more ironic than anything. But when I was watching that when I was 16, I almost pissed myself laughing watching that film, and it became my favorite just because of that. The stupid humor of it. I don't think they could make a Porky's. I don't know. All the American Pie films that came out in the 2000s or whatever, they all owe a debt of gratitude to Porky's, because Porky's was the one that basically, National Lampoon stuff, but Porky's was, the original, teen sex high school comedy or whatever, right? And it was full of hijinks. But I don't think they would be able to make that today. I'm not sure. But uh, the American Pie series kind of became more funny, but gross funny rather than sexual funny. You know what I mean? Anyways, but it owes gratitude to Porky's. Now, Porky's came out. There was three Porky's movies. The first one is the funny one. The second and the third one, bit of yawn fest. But I have the first one on DVD. I can't find them on Blu-ray yet. But then I found all three of them together in one case. So I said, great. So I'll just replace my one that has just. And I haven't watched them yet, but I'm wondering if these are in full screen. I think they may still be in full screen. Yeah, full screen. It's really hard to find Porky's um, in widescreen for some reason. Almost every DVD that I've ever come across of Porky's has always been in full screen. So 4:3 or whatever, rather than 16:9, right? So, so I'm still looking. I know they have a collection on Blu-ray of Porky's. I've seen it on Amazon. I just never bought it. I don't like buying stuff new if I can avoid it. Uh, Especially stuff that isn't difficult to find, right? Porky's was a popular film at the time, and you do come across DVDs of it, but just not Blu-rays. I guess nobody really bought the Blu-ray much, and therefore you don't see it much on the secondary market. All right, so that's Porky's. Really funny film if you like moronic sexual teenage humor. Um, uh, I laughed my ass off at it. Okay, so then one of my all-time favorite Disney films, non-cartoon films, and that's The Parent Trap. This is one of Disney's most famous films, basically about twins who were separated at birth. One went with the father and one went with the mother. Then they collaborate to get their parents back together again. It's quite an enjoyable film, and I have like three or four others of this, the thick DVD cases So I'll just add that to the volume. All right. So then I found the Diamond Edition of Sleeping Beauty. All right. Another Disney film on Blu-ray. I collect them on Blu-ray. The Miracle on 34th Street, that great classic film with him saying that he's basically Kris Kringle or Santa Claus, and then they bring him to court to put him in a crazy person's house because they think he's crazy, but then he goes about proving that he is Santa Claus, kind of. Anyway, that's quite an interesting film. I still don't enjoy this though, how they put the color. When they advertise a film that's in black and white, they always put a color poster or a color. It seems disingenuous to me. I know this is a black and white film, and if they colorized it, that would make sense. But they're just colorizing to make it look nicer. But then when you put the film in, if you think it's in color, it's not. It's in black and white, right? That may disappoint you, but I have no problem with black and white films. And then Glass, the third of the M. Night Shyamalan. I always have difficulty pronouncing his last name. Series that started with what? Unbreakable, um, with Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. This is the third film in that series, right? So I have it on DVD. I didn't have it on Blu-ray. All right, and then The Fate of Lee Khan, another in the Masters of Cinema collection that I took. This is number 214. This I bought off a couple of months ago. I bought off Amazon. It was under 20 at the time, so I bought it. All right, and then I found a steelbook of Sherlock Holmes. All right, but the problem is see the spine of it. It doesn't look like your regular Sherlock Holmes. It looks like a cheesy, cheap version of it, right? Anyways, but it's a nice steelbook of it, so I always upgrade when I can. So Blu-ray of it, and also picked up a Blu-ray of I don't know where that might be upstairs because I'm gonna watch it. A steelbook Blu-ray of the second of Sherlock Holmes, the second film as well. And I found the first Star Trek film on a steelbook as well. All right, and I picked this up, all nine of the Fast and Furious films. Now there's a tenth one coming out, and I think that's the end of the franchise. So maybe I should have waited for that film to come out. I think it's coming out this year, and then it's done, and they'll probably put out another package which has all 10 of the films because they had a package that had 8 of the films when the ninth one came out. They just keep putting it out over and over and over again, just with more. You have a box set of Blu-rays that have 1 to 6, and then you had one to 7, 1 to 8, and now 1 to 9. And I found this for like $20, so I picked it up. All the Blu-rays of 1 to 9 in the Fast and Furious collection. And that is everything it looks like. All right. Or, no, hold on. I still have a few more. Oh, maybe not. Hold on. Did I do these ones? Yeah, I did. I think I did these ones already. When you collect a whole bunch of stuff, sometimes you forget what you buy and what you have shown, but I think that's everything. All right, so that's everything. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. Join the channel if you so choose. I would appreciate that as well, but no pressure. And I will see you in my next video. All right, and you have a great day. Bye for now.